everybody. Welcome to another exclusive interview with VIT Today. With us today, we have Dr. Shailesh Nayak. He is an Indian scientist and is currently the director of the National Institute of Advanced Studies and a distinguished scientist in the Ministry of Earth Sciences. He was the chair of the Earth Systems Science Organization and secretary to the Government of India for the Ministry of Earth Sciences in the Indian government between August 2008 to 2015. He was also the chairman of the Earth Commission of India and had the pleasure of serving as an interim chairman of ISRO, India's Space and Research Organization. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir. So, starting with the first question, we'll take something that's, everyone's facing right now. So, everything that we know about normalcy has been basically thrown out of the window. And, a lot of people in this generation still don't have access to the internet or hardware luxury. So, how do you believe that technology can fill this void? And how can we enable more people to take part in the vision of the new normal?
Yeah, I mean, what you are trying to say is basically internet and so mainly communication with the other people. But I think if you see this today in India, almost half population is now using internet, and recent data says that there are more people in rural areas than the urban are using internet. So there may be issues, I agree with you, but it's not that completely they do not have an access. And even if they do not have an access to, say, internet, we can use very effectively TV and radio also for communication or even education. In ISRO, the first the experiment, the site started with how you can provide education through TV. That was but of course, after that, we have internet, and so those things, but those things are still available. Those technologies are still available, and they are now much easier. And practically nowadays, everybody has a TV or a radio. So you can always use the technology in a way that you can push the information. In internet, you may try to pull the information, but the combination of both, I think we would be able to handle. That doesn't mean that the physical presence, say, in a classroom is not very important. It is very important because apart from teaching, when you are we are basically a social animal. So there are many other things goes on between your neighbor or your other friends in the school, or you may play some games during recess or eat together your lunch. There are n number of activities which happens, which needs. So those are definitely an issue. But again, we have to weigh, the pros and cons of each of this. That currently, where the things are rising, it may be good to have the social distancing and all.
Right.
But slowly, the fear is going, and now, the exams are being conducted now, with keeping proper social distance, wearing a mask. So we have to learn. I think we have to learn to live with it for some more time. And it's not only the technology, but also, our own behavior, and has to also change to address this issue.
Right. Okay.
So I'm just going to pause the record. So now when you spoke about how there are negative sides to not being able to study in school, and same thing when you say work from home, I think a very big aspect of the work environment nowadays is networking, and the same thing from school, all the learnings you take back from other students with you and from teachers outside class hours. So now that we are in this situation, how can we try to enable that kind of learning and that kind of networking through these very technologies that we are currently using, be it video conferencing, television, any of that kind of stuff? How can we improve that communication?
I think this ultimately, I think we will be evolving some kind of a hybrid method, which would be possible even before pandemic came. This Baiju and many others, they started teaching on through internet, and so it was not that it was not available. So, but ultimately, my feeling is that we will go towards some kind of a hybrid system where you can use both the advantages of both the methods. But I don't think that only this way of internet, everything will be able to do it. So we may have to use both ways, and probably, in some areas, the percentage of which method you maybe 10 or 20 or somewhere it is 30 or 40 could be changing depending upon. In many rural areas, we may have to still use the physical methods of teaching. But in some areas, like when you have to travel a long distance for some specific thing, you may prefer to do it from home. And so I think it would be weighed, which is possible. Like what we are doing, having this interview, typically, you have to go to studio and then, you can do the same thing from your home. And basically, it doesn't matter, it is more or less same. But if you have to have a, say, conference where apart from reading your paper, or you also meet new people and try to talk to them, which won't happen in this scenario. So we have to see what purpose it is being done, and whatever the best way of thinking happening, we should do that. Also, the new things which is coming, you must be aware of hologram and all, where virtually you feel you are there, Those things will also happen now. So it is not that you are far off, but you will feel that you are on the dais itself, sitting or talking to everybody, but you are actually not there. So I think those kind of things also will evolve. And why we have survived all these years is basically we have been able to use our knowledge, technology, innovation to overcome some of the issues which other animals or other plant life are not able to do it. So man has, that human being has certain capability which is going beyond. We may have artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is making sometimes life very easy, but also it has disadvantage also. But this is going to happen. I mean, any technology, if you say earlier nuclear, you can have an atom bomb for destruction. But today, for the cancer, that is a great boon, because a lot of people are getting cured because of that. So any technology will have some minuses, some pluses. It is for us how best to make use of.
Yes, sir. So now when we talk about space technology or the development of space in general, I think the first image that comes to a lot of us is spacefaring, traveling to distant celestial bodies, what we might see in science fiction movies. But for the common public, at least, a lot of the other technologies that we currently use, which are enabled by space, isn't as clearly linked to space. So from an insider's perspective, how would you give us an idea of how much space actually impacts our daily life?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a bit. I mean, of course, our curiosity to what happens in our solar system and beyond would be always there, and we must explore. But if you see currently, there are many things which is possible because of the space technology. I'll give you one or two examples. See, like cyclone, which is it comes on East Coast very regularly. And before the satellite came, and we understood how to make use of it, thousands of people used to die. 99 in Orissa, more than 20,000 people died. Okay. The reason was that we were not able to get the sufficient advance notice of the cyclone. once we started using the satellite, which is able to see the almost 1/3 of the globe all the time, we now know almost 10 days before that cyclone is likely to come. And then there are other information, and there are extremely good models that have been developed. So we are able to predict the path pretty well. The last cyclone also, the path was predicted pretty well. And then that allows two things that happen. One, the government which has to respond has sufficient now confidence in the forecast that if they say that this cyclone is likely to go to Puri or Visakhapatnam or to Bangladesh or to Calcutta, it happens. You know, the accuracy of the forecast that this is the area which is likely to happen, this is the time when it is likely to happen, are reasonably very good. So the government has sufficient time to prepare for evacuation, all that. And earlier, people were also not believing that these people are saying, but it doesn't happen. Because earlier, there used to be false warning also. But today, the false warning is practically nil. So people also get evacuated. And last cyclone, hardly some 10 or 20 people died, which earlier used to be in thousands. This is, I would consider, when you save a life for people, I think it is the most important thing which is. There are many other examples, like we have a very good service for the fishermen. And earlier fishermen used to spend a lot of time to search for fishing grounds. Now the advisories are given where they have been given where the fishing ground is, and also many other things are given, like what would be the sea condition there, what would be the currents, what kind of waves you will expect. So they know that what to expect there when they go there. And because of all this, their effort to catch, say, 1 kg fish, earlier they were taking 2. Now the effort is, say, 1. So almost half the effort, they get the same catch. So that has been a lot of tremendous benefit for their socio-economic conditions. Now this service is purely based on the satellite data. So it says what is the temperature, what is the food availability, what is the sea state conditions. Now all this information comes through a satellite and then analyzed and then again transmitted back to them with the other media, like it can be TV or radio or a mobile or a now they are also using Navig satellite. So if they are away in the sea also, you can use it. So, and it's not only gives them information about the fish, but any other danger or a hazard, like if cyclone is coming, where exactly they should go. Because sometimes if they don't know where to go, then there could be a problem, or high waves are coming, or strong winds are there. All kinds of information is now. So their life has improved. I can give many examples of this kind for farmers now, which is the weather forecast has improved tremendously now. Is again because 95% of the information which we use in the model comes from the satellite. And that is why the forecast has improved, and like fisherman, farmer also, we give an advisory that next 5 days, what is likely, whether rains are going to come or not, or whether it would be cloudy or it would be windy. So they know what to do, what kind of farm practices they should do, which also leads to tremendous benefit. So there are each and every field, like forestry or a groundwater, or the other disasters or land use, urban, everywhere the use of satellite data is now very much there. And the most important is the satellite, the entertainment or for education. One of the important is through satellite. Your communication, even mobiles and many, and now, there are plans to lay hundreds of satellites for the internet connectivity. So You don't need anything. Wherever you are, you can get it connected. So I think apart from those things, these are the things which is helping the common man. Actually, the right up to the grassroots level, the small fisherman or a small farmer also is getting benefit.
All right. So it's quite clear that your work is primarily focused on fields of earth sciences, including scientific contributions to oceanography, geology, and remote sensing. So, having such a vast experience and clear insight into the field, what areas of research in earth sciences do you foresee being most important in the coming years?
Yeah, I think there are 4 or 5 areas are very critical for us.
Okay.
If you look at India per se, then the most important thing for us is a monsoon. And though we have made tremendous progress in last decade or so, but still there are many things to be understood, and it has to need to improve much better and better. So this is one area which we will have to continue our research to give a forecast much better. Currently, we are giving at a district level. We should go to a block level for a short-term forecast. And the seasonal forecast we give for 5 different regions and India as a whole, but we may have to go much beyond, say, state-wise or even district-wise, whether what. So this is one, I think, is a major area. The second area is, if you look at the problem, is in many cities and many other areas is of air pollution. So we have been able to see it is not whether you measure air pollution and say that whether it is polluted or not, but there are many other issues, whether we would be able to give a forecast that after 3 days or 4 days, this is likely to happen. Right now, we are giving for a very short-term forecast. So we may be able to take precaution. Like sometimes, there is a dust storm comes from Iran, Pakistan, and right up to here. And if it is going to come, we may say, okay, this is likely to happen. People are advised to stay in home, or certain polluting industry or vehicle traffic can be reduced. Lots of things can be done. So that is another area. The third, which is now becoming very critical for us, that we are going to depend on ocean more and more. And many things which is in land is not available. Like in India, we don't have a nickel and cobalt, which is most critical or strategically very critical metals for the electronic industry. So we may have to look for in ocean. And India has already located quite a bit of cobalt, nickel, copper, manganese nodules, which has a very 380 million tons of this. But they are lying at a 6,000 meter below. And the pressure is 600 bars. So it's a tremendous pressure. So we have already built some of the equipments to go there, that our instrument goes right up to there, what we call as a remotely operable vehicle, and measure different properties. They have arms, robotic arms, so they can pick up the samples. We can test the strength of the soil. So we may have to say next 10, 15, 20 years, we may have to start mining of that. So that technology is equally critical. And it is not only that nodule, but there are many other metals are also there, gold, silver, also some of the rare earths. So the ocean has tremendous capacity. There is another energy resource, which is gas hydrates, which is solidified methane gas. We have such a large deposit that it can meet our energy requirement for next 500 years. Now, but all they are in 3,000 meters below. So we need to build those technologies to harness those resources, which we may be needing in future. So this is the another major area where we need to focus our research. The fourth area is you must be all aware that the sea level is rising, and even if we stop everything, it is going to continuously rise for at least another 50, 60 years. So the coastal zone, there is a major threat, and we must understand like that what exactly happening, which are the areas are going to be affected, so that we don't make much investment there and try to protect where the investment has been already made. So this is, I think, the managing our coast from the various hazard, cyclone, then also tsunami. So those things also needs our very attention. Also, the pollution on the coast. There is another problem coming of microplastics. So, and if you see our population is shifting towards the coast. If you see, the most coastal regions are more populated than the hinterland. And because of the development, this is what normally happens. So the vulnerability of people also gets increased if they shift towards the coast. So this is another area where we need to focus on. Fifth is the earthquakes. See, still today we don't know what exactly or how earthquakes are occurring, what is the mechanics, what is the physics behind it. And India has launched a very major program where what we are trying to do is all the measurements which we make about earthquake is from the surface. While you know that it occurs deep in the earth, almost 10, 15, 30, 50, 100 kilometers below. So you can't go there and measure. Like the many other hazards, we have been able to measure, so we have been able to understand it. But those things which we are not able to measure, we may have to go there. Now, India is very fortunate to have a site near Koina where earthquakes are occurring between 4 and 7 kilometers. So we have made a plan that we will dig a borehole and lower our instrument there and find out what happens before earthquake, during earthquake, and after the earthquake. Once we understand that, we may be able to give a better understanding, better processes. We may be able to model it. And that, I think, the another area. And India has now already drilled up to 3 kilometers. A lot of new information has come after that. And this borehole now will go up to 7 kilometers to go right up to where earthquakes are occurring. So I think this is another area which is very critical. The other area is you must be aware about the Antarctica, Arctic, and the Himalaya. Now, this has the largest snow and ice on the earth. And how or what is going to happen to them? Now, we have a little bit understanding about what happens in the Arctic, that sea ice is decreasing. There are also some of the Greenland ice sheets are melting. So because of that, the sea level is rising. But still the understanding about Antarctica is not complete. Antarctica, in some part, actually, we are gaining ice instead of losing ice. But some area we are losing ice. In Himalaya also, many places we are losing the ice. All this, how it interacts with the atmosphere, with the local geology, with the biota or atmosphere. And this is very important because unless you know that, we won't be able to know that what is likely to happen to glacier. Some says it will last for 30 years, some says 50 years, but these are all guesstimates. You know, we don't know what is likely to happen. So this is the another major area where we need to focus. There are many other areas, but I think these are I would say, grand challenges we need to address.
Right.
All
So when we ended up in our lockdown initially when Corona started, I think one of our major concerns being climate change was actually addressed to some extent for a short period of time, right? We saw the skies clearing up, we saw cleaner air, we saw better water quality, all of that happening when we've entered into lockdown. So how can we capitalize on this momentum that we've built over the last 2-3 months and kind of work towards preventing that from relapsing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, see, the one thing you have to understand is that the current uh, climate change, global warming has happened because of last 150 to 200 years of industrialization. It is not 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 months. Okay, so it is at the carbon dioxide increase almost doubled, from the pre-industrial age to. So this now during pandemic for say 2 months, definitely some of the our activities were much lower, so the things improved. But it is not going to make any impact on the climate as a whole. Okay. But temporarily, okay, fine, there is no pollution, we felt good, sky looks blue instead of hazy all the time. So this is not going to last for long. I mean, if you can maintain this for next 30, 50 years, then you may see some change. So this is very temporarily. And the main thing which is, so what we are trying to do is, we are trying to reduce the energy use. Okay. Or we are trying to make the renewable or non-polluting energy, like say solar or a wind, which is gaining quite a ground, and it is going to help, no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. But there are other problems also in solar and wind, that it is not, it is a time wise, like in daytime, you have some highs and lows, evening and mornings are low, afternoons are high. Night, there is no solar. Wind also keeps on changing depending upon the wind. But the energy which you are receiving has to come at a very constant frequency. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay. So you will still need a thermal or a nuclear or a hydro, so that you can ramp up the requirement during the up and down, you can do and do that balancing act. So even if we do, I believe that at least next 50, 60 years, we will still depend on thermal energy. So we will have to use a coal. So the challenge is not to use coal, but challenge is how we can develop clean technology to use the coal. And it is not that it is not possible. It is possible. So, but how to do, whether it laboratory experiment proved that it can be done, but when you want to scale it up, the engineering and so many other things comes into picture. So we have to deal with that. So I feel that the current has not going to make any impact on the climate change. But the behavior which we have, if we continue for a long term, this kind of our own behavior, not to waste energy, not to waste food or all kinds of things, then probably it will have an impact. So apart from that, the behavioral change is also very critical.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So finally, there are a lot of students who are, looking to pursue a career in technology and in research. So, to such aspiring youth, what would your advice be, and what would be a good skill set that they can acquire?
See, now, the earlier, there were very strong divisions of the subjects, the biology
Right.
will never think about mathematics or physics, or somebody who is doing physics will never think about biology or chemistry. So now, those boundaries are not there. I mean, if you want to find a solution to any problem, you need all kinds of people.
Mhm.
Like today, you have been seeing that there are peoples from a wide variety of people are trying to address this COVID-19. Maybe medical doctors, there are biotechnologies, there are the experts on genomes. So the molecular biologists, computational biologists, so many other people, and some of them may be physicists, chemistry, mathematics, all kinds of background.
Right.
But the basic thing which is now happening is, if you see by and large, most people or most technology or science will need some kind of a computing capability.
Okay.
So that is becoming very critical. That means you don't have to be an expert in mathematics or statistics, but you should be able to use that information or that technology in your subject. So
Okay.
that is happening. Also, many times, it is not that only that knowledge is enough. You also need to understand the behavior of a person, his own. So you must be heard that a lot of people are talking about personal medicine, depending upon your genome, and you will give a medicine which is specifically for you. So the things are becoming very complex in a sense that for addressing anything, you need little wider knowledge. And if you see that the new education policy has addressed that issue in a sense
Right.
that clear, if I want to do physics and I have interest in archaeology, it was not possible. Okay.
Yeah.
Today it will be possible.
Mm.
And in NIAS, we really encourage, we have a person who is doing in music, but his basic qualification is archaeologist.
Oh.
We have a person who does work on we are trying to understand some of the neurological problems, and the team comprises of a philosopher, a psychologist, a mathematician, a computer scientist, and of course, neurologist. So now when you want to find a solution today for any definite problem, we are realizing that not a single discipline is not going to. So you need to acquire that much knowledge. Suppose I want to become a neurologist, I should be able to talk to a computer scientist or a philosopher or a psychologist, not become expert, but at least I should be able to communicate with.
Right.
So the skills which we may have to develop may not necessarily you have to obtain degree in each and everything. You can still have a degree in neurology, but you need to understand the other aspects also as well. And this is true in each and every field it is happening. So that is why I think the very strong boundaries between the subjects are slowly going away. You must have seen the people who are getting Nobel Prize are not necessarily their basic degree in that subject. The physicist getting Nobel in biology or chemical fellow gets in the biology, or like vice versa, all kinds of things. Because things are quite changed. And I think it is change for a good, because the basic understanding of the entire system, you need more than one expertise. So the basic skills, if you have to find what you want to become. But I personally believe that in most fields today, you need a skill for computing, maybe at various levels of degrees, but you need the skills of computing, because that is where the lot of new things are coming. The artificial intelligence coming, machine learning, which is going to make things much simpler also, but very difficult. Today, if you have an Alexa, you just ask what is the temperature, it tells you the temperature. But the technology behind this is a very, very complex. So when the things become simpler for us, the behind the skin technology becomes more and more complex. And that is how you should think and build the necessary skill for a specific field, what you would like to do.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that advice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
So that actually brings us to our last question. So we would like to thank you for your insight on the fields that we asked you about, and about how technology will play a role moving out of this pandemic and kind of working towards a healthier, more stable Earth. So thank you very much, sir, for coming on and giving us this opportunity of talking to you. We really appreciate it.
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. I really enjoyed. And, when you ask something, I can know what young minds think, person like us. So I think you are on a right track. You had an idea that what is required for the society to move forward. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, sir.